Have you ever tried to heal a persistent pain only to discover it returns again and again? Perhaps you've changed jobs thinking the stress would disappear, ended toxic relationships believing that would resolve your emotional distress, or tried different relaxation techniques hoping anxiety would finally leave you. But the relief is temporary, and the pain returns. Carl Jung, one of the most revolutionary psychologists of the 20th century, left us with a fundamental teaching that few have the courage to face. We cannot truly heal if we only treat the surface symptoms. Real transformation happens when we have the courage to dive into the depths of our being to heal the root of our pain. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you tried to silence that inner voice telling you something isn't right in your life? How many times have you ignored your dreams, your intuitions, or those uncomfortable emotions that arise in the most unexpected moments? Jung warned us that every time we repress these signals, every time we ignore the call of our unconscious, we create more distance between who we are and who we pretend to be. Today's world is designed to keep us on the surface. Quick fixes, instant pleasures, constant distractions. Everything is configured to prevent us from looking inward. It's easier to take a pill for a headache than to ask ourselves why our head hurts. It's simpler to blame others for our discomfort than to examine our own wounds. But Jung knew this approach only prolongs our suffering. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This statement from Jung contains one of the most powerful keys to personal transformation. What we ignore doesn't disappear. It simply sinks into the depths of our unconscious, from where it continues to influence every decision, every reaction, every relationship we establish. When you experience that persistent feeling of emptiness, that discontent you cannot name, or that constant repetition of the same painful patterns, you're not experiencing mere coincidences. You're witnessing the manifestation of your unconscious, that part of you desperately trying to be heard. Jung spoke extensively about the shadow, that aspect of our psyche that contains everything we've rejected, repressed, or denied about ourselves. It's not something evil, as many think. The shadow simply harbors the parts of ourselves that have seemed unacceptable, whether due to social, family, or cultural conditioning. Imagine a child who learns early on that expressing anger is bad. Over time, they repress their anger, push it into the shadow. But that energy doesn't disappear. It manifests in unexplainable bursts of irritability, in relationships where they feel constantly dominated, or even in physical symptoms like chronic tension or digestive problems. The symptom is irritability or tension, but the root is the repressed anger they never learn to express in a healthy way. Do you see? We can spend years treating the symptoms, taking medications for tension, attending therapies to manage irritability. But if we never confront the root, if we never recover and accept that part of us that feels anger, the cycle will continue indefinitely. This is precisely the type of deep inner work that Jung invites us to undertake. It's not simply about feeling better momentarily. It's about a true integration of all parts of our being, including and especially those we've tried to deny. Now, how do we begin this journey to the depths? Jung offered us several tools, but perhaps the most fundamental is the willingness to listen. Really listen, not with the intention to respond or judge, but with the openness necessary to receive what emerges from within. Your dreams, for example, are a direct window to your unconscious. Do you record them? Do you pay attention to them? Jung considered dreams not as cryptic messages requiring an expert interpreter, but as direct communications from our unconscious using the universal language of symbols. Perhaps you recurrently dream that you're lost in a labyrinth, or arriving late for an important exam, or fleeing from something you can't clearly see. These aren't simply products of difficult digestion, as some suggest. They are symbolic manifestations of your internal conflicts, your unrecognized fears, your repressed longings. Another powerful tool is observing your disproportionate emotional reactions. Jung spoke of complexes, those knots of psychic energy charged with emotion that form around unresolved painful experiences. When someone says or does something seemingly insignificant and you react with unexpected intensity, you're not simply having a bad day. You're experiencing the activation of a complex. Maybe your boss gives you a small criticism and you feel as if you've been punched in the stomach. The root isn't in the current criticism, but probably in early experiences where judgment from authority figures meant rejection or abandonment. The symptom is your exaggerated reaction to criticism. The root is the deep fear of rejection you've never fully confronted. Jung taught us that these complexes aren't enemies to defeat, but parts of ourselves that need to be recognized, understood, and integrated. When you learn to identify the activation of a complex, you're taking the first step to release that trapped energy that has been influencing your life from the shadow. Think about your relationships. Do you notice recurring patterns? Do you always end up with partners who abandon you? Or perhaps you constantly attract people who need to be saved? Or maybe you repeatedly find yourself in situations where you feel invisible or undervalued? Jung introduced the concept of the anima and the animus, the internal representations of the feminine and masculine that we all carry within, regardless of our gender. When these energies are imbalanced or haven't been properly integrated, we project them in our relationships, seeking outside what we haven't recognized within. The person who constantly chooses partners who abandon them may be avoiding confronting their own fear of commitment. Those who always rescue others might be denying their own vulnerability, and those who feel invisible in their relationships could be disconnected from their own internal value. The symptom is the painful relational pattern. The root is the internal imbalance you've never directly addressed. You can change partners again and again, attend workshops on establishing healthy boundaries, read dozens of books on relationships, but if you don't heal the root, the pattern will continue, just with different faces and in different scenarios. Are you beginning to see the big picture? We're surrounded by solutions that promise to alleviate our symptoms, but few invite us to dive deeply to transform the underlying causes. And this is precisely the difference between temporary relief and true healing. The process of individuation, as Jung called it, is neither an easy nor a quick path. It's the work of a lifetime. It's the ongoing commitment to listen to your inner self, to confront your shadows, to integrate your rejected aspects, and to align increasingly with your true nature. But don't misunderstand. This deep inner work is not an exercise in self-torture or an obsession with the past. It's an act of profound self-love. It's the brave decision to stop running from yourself and start embracing all your dimensions. It's the recognition that true peace doesn't come from eliminating pain, but from understanding and integrating it. Jung invited us to see our wounds not as defects that diminish us, but as portals to greater consciousness. Each pain, each trauma, each difficult experience offers us the opportunity to know ourselves more deeply, to develop greater compassion toward ourselves and others. Let's think about the example of repressed anger. When you finally allow yourself to recognize and healthily express your anger, you don't just release accumulated tension. You also discover your capacity to establish boundaries, to defend yourself when necessary, to use that energy as a driver for positive changes. Integrated anger becomes assertiveness, clarity, well-utilized personal power. Or consider the fear of abandonment. When you have the courage to explore its roots, perhaps you'll discover early experiences of separation that you've never fully processed. By confronting that old pain, by feeling it fully instead of avoiding it, you begin to release its control over you. Gradually, you learn to cultivate internal security that doesn't depend on the constant presence of others. Integrated fear transforms into discernment, the ability to be alone without feeling lonely, relationships based on desire rather than need. This is the psychological alchemy Jung spoke of, the transformation of our wounds into wisdom, our fears into strengths, our rejected parts into valuable resources. We don't eliminate anything, we transmute everything. And here we arrive at one of Jung's most profound teachings, the concept of the self. Beyond our conscious ego, beyond even our personal shadow, there exists an organizing center of the psyche that Jung called the self. It's the core of our being, the totality that encompasses both the conscious and the unconscious. The self manifests through universal symbols that appear in our dreams, in our intuitions, in the synchronicities we experience. It's not something we can control with our conscious will, but we can learn to listen to its signals, to follow its subtle guidance. When we align our conscious decisions with this deeper wisdom, we experience what Jung called synchronicity, those meaningful moments where external events seem to perfectly reflect our internal state. They're not simple coincidences, but manifestations of the deep interconnection between our psyche and the world around us. Have you ever had that experience of thinking about someone and receiving their call minutes later? Or finding exactly the book you needed without consciously looking for it? Or casually overhearing a conversation that precisely answers the question you'd internally posed? These are examples of synchronicity, signs that you're in tune with something larger than your conscious ego. And they become more frequent as you deepen your inner work, as you heal not just the symptoms, but the roots of your discomfort. Let me tell you now about something fundamental. This deep inner work is not a solitary task. Although it requires moments of introspection and self-exploration, it also flourishes in the context of authentic relationships. Jung was a firm advocate for the importance of the therapeutic bond, but he also deeply valued meaningful connections in all their forms. When we genuinely open ourselves to another human being, when we allow ourselves to be seen in our vulnerability, we create the space for a healing that we couldn't achieve in isolation. Our deepest wounds occurred in relationship, and much of our healing will also occur in relationship. This doesn't mean dependence or codependence. On the contrary, it's about recognizing our inherently social nature without sacrificing our individuality. It's the delicate balance between autonomy and connection that Jung considered essential for a healthy psyche. Conscious relationships thus become mirrors that reflect aspects of ourselves we couldn't see on our own. The irritation you feel towards certain people may be pointing to a characteristic of yours that you've rejected. The excessive admiration toward another may indicate qualities you possess but haven't developed. Each interaction becomes an opportunity for greater self-knowledge. Jung called this phenomenon projection and considered it one of the most important psychological mechanisms to understand. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves, he said. When we recognize our projections and withdraw them from others, we recover valuable parts of our psyche that we had externalized. Think about that person who inexplicably irritates you. Perhaps you're bothered by their arrogance, or their constant need for attention, or their apparent weakness. What if those qualities that so displease you are aspects of yourself that you've repressed? What if your irritation is really an invitation to recognize and accept those rejected parts? The symptom is your annoyance toward the other. The root is in your rejection of aspects of yourself. You can avoid that person. You can criticize them internally. You can even try to change them. But if you don't recognize the projection, you'll simply find another person who activates the same irritation, perpetuating the cycle. This type of inner work requires relentless honesty. It's not enough to theorize about your patterns. You must be willing to feel the discomfort that arises when you confront uncomfortable truths about yourself. As Jung said, there is no birth of consciousness without pain. But don't confuse this necessary pain with useless suffering. The discomfort you experience when confronting your shadows is the pain of expansion, of integration, of growth. It's similar to muscle pain after a good workout, a sign that you're strengthening, not that you're damaging yourself. And here we arrive at another fundamental concept in Jungian psychology, the tension of opposites. Jung observed that the human psyche is full of seemingly irreconcilable polarities: conscious and unconscious, thought and feeling, introversion and extroversion, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. The initial impulse of the ego is to identify with one pole and reject the other. We define ourselves as rational and despise emotion, or we consider ourselves spiritual and deny our basic instincts. But Jung showed us that true integration doesn't come from choosing one side, but from holding the tension between opposites until a third possibility emerges that transcends and includes them. This is the profound meaning of the alchemical symbol that so fascinated Jung, the conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. It's not a mere conciliation or compromise, but an alchemical transformation that generates something new, something that wasn't present in either of the original poles. Have you ever experienced an internal conflict where two parts of you seem to want completely different things? Perhaps one part yearns for stability and security, while another craves adventure and novelty. The superficial approach would be to choose one desire and ignore the other, or alternate between both without ever really integrating them. Deep inner work consists of listening to both voices, understanding the legitimate needs they represent, and seeking not a compromise solution, but a third way that honors the essence of both. Perhaps you discover that you can create a secure base from which to explore the new, satisfying both your need for stability and your longing for adventure. This is the type of integration that produces not just temporary relief, but lasting transformation. You're not simply managing symptoms. You're reconfiguring the very structure of your psyche. Jung warned us about the dangers of seeking shortcuts in this process. In our culture of instant gratification, we want quick solutions, infallible techniques, magic pills that eliminate pain without the arduous work of transformation. But he knew that such shortcuts only postpone the real work we will eventually have to do. There is no technique for achieving enlightenment, Jung said. The path to psychic integration isn't a formula you can memorize or a method you can mechanically apply. It's an organic process unique to each individual that requires constant attention, infinite patience, and a good dose of humility. This doesn't mean we're helpless or that the process is completely random. Jung identified certain stages and patterns that tend to repeat in the individuation journey. He spoke of the importance of confrontation with the shadow, of the encounter with the anima or animus, of the integration of the persona, our social mask, and finally, of connection with the self. But the specific order, intensity, and particular manifestation of these stages vary enormously from person to person. What represents a dramatic confrontation with the shadow for someone might be an almost imperceptible gradual process for another. What manifests through vivid dreams for one might appear in significant synchronicities or spontaneous creative expressions for another. The fundamental thing is to maintain an attitude of openness and curiosity toward what emerges from within. Jung called this active imagination, a form of conscious dialogue with the unconscious that allows its contents to manifest without being dominated by the ego or rejected by fear. Through active imagination, you can engage in conversations with your dream figures, explore the symbols that appear in your fantasies, or even directly dialogue with different aspects of your personality. This isn't an exercise in escapist fantasy, but a powerful tool for establishing a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. Jung himself regularly practiced this technique and extensively documented it in his Red Book, an intimate diary of his inner explorations that he maintained during years of intense self-exploration. Through this work, he discovered that the unconscious isn't simply a repository of repressed material, as Freud suggested, but a source of creative wisdom and potential for renewal. This positive perspective of the unconscious is one of Jung's most important contributions. While many psychological traditions see the unconscious primarily as something problematic to control or overcome, Jung considered it the wellspring of our vitality, creativity, and potential for transformation. This vision has profound implications for our approach to inner work. Instead of seeing our symptoms as enemies to eliminate, we can recognize them as messengers bringing us valuable information. Instead of fighting against our rejected parts, we can dialogue with them and discover the gifts they have to offer us. Imagine your psyche as a vast kingdom with many distinct regions. Superficial work would be like fixing the facade of the castle while ignoring the crumbling foundations. Deep inner work involves exploring every corner of the kingdom, establishing diplomatic relations between conflicting regions, and eventually unifying the kingdom under the wise leadership of the self. This work isn't merely personal, it has transpersonal dimensions that Jung explored through his concept of the collective unconscious. Beyond our individual experiences, we share a psychic substrate common to all humanity, populated by universal archetypes that manifest through recurring symbols in myths, fairy tales, dreams, and artistic expressions from all cultures. When we do our deep inner work, we're not just healing our personal wounds, we're participating in the transformation of the collective psyche. As Jung said, he who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens, and when we awaken individually, we contribute to the collective awakening of humanity. This is perhaps the most hopeful aspect of Jungian psychology, the idea that our individual inner work has repercussions that go far beyond our personal well-being. In a world fragmented by divisions and collective projections, the act of withdrawing our own projections and integrating our personal shadows becomes an act of planetary healing. Jung lived through 2 world wars and witnessed the immense destructive capacity of unrecognized collective shadows. He saw how mass projections could turn entire groups into receptacles for our rejected parts, preparing the ground for devastating conflicts. His response wasn't despair, but a call to inner work, as an antidote to outer chaos. Know thyself isn't simply advice for personal growth, it's an ethical responsibility in an interconnected world. Each time you integrate a rejected aspect of yourself, each time you withdraw a harmful projection, each time you transform a destructive pattern, you're contributing to the psychological health of the whole to which you belong. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more deeply you dive into your authentic individuality, the more you connect with the universal. The more faithfully you follow your unique path of individuation, the more you contribute to the collective good. There's no contradiction between true personal development and service to the world. They're 2 sides of the same coin. This understanding liberates us from the false dichotomy between inner work and outer action. We don't need to choose between meditating or marching, between therapy or activism, between spiritual development or social commitment. Deep inner work makes us more effective in our outer action, and engaged interaction with the world enriches our inner journey. Jung offers us an integral vision that honors both the depth and breadth of human experience. It's not just about feeling better, though that certainly happens. It's about becoming more complete, more authentic, more capable of contributing your unique gifts to the world we share. And what happens when we persist in this path, when we continue healing not just the symptoms, but the roots of our suffering? Jung observed that qualities emerge that seem almost miraculous, an authenticity that transcends social masks, a creativity that flows without obstacles, a compassion that encompasses both light and shadow, a wisdom that integrates intellect and intuition, and perhaps, most remarkably, a capacity to experience genuine joy even amid life's inevitable difficulties. Not the superficial happiness that depends on favorable external circumstances, but a deep serenity that remains accessible even in times of pain or uncertainty. Jung experienced this in his own life. After a period of profound psychological crisis in which he confronted his own shadows and integrated rejected aspects of his personality, he emerged with renewed vitality and explosive creativity that fueled decades of innovative work. He didn't avoid suffering, he went through it and transformed it. This is the gift he offers us, the understanding that our deepest wounds, when addressed with awareness and compassion, can become our greatest strengths. We don't need to escape our pain. We need to listen to its message, honor its purpose, and integrate the wisdom it contains. I want to invite you now to reflect on your own journey. Where have you been treating symptoms while ignoring roots? What patterns repeat in your life despite your best efforts to change them? What inner voices have you been silencing because they feel uncomfortable or threatening? Don't judge yourself for what you discover. We all have areas of our lives where we've opted for quick fixes or temporary distractions. We all have aspects of ourselves that we've relegated to the shadow because we didn't know how to integrate them. This recognition isn't cause for shame, but the first brave step toward deeper healing. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Just as Jung found support and guidance in mentors, colleagues, and in his own connection with the collective unconscious, you too can seek fellow travelers. Whether a trained therapist, a personal growth group, or simply friends with whom you can be authentic, conscious relationships are an invaluable resource in deep inner work. This channel is also a space where we can explore together these deeper dimensions of human experience. A place where we can honor both our lights and our shadows, where we can share our struggles and celebrate our transformations. I invite you to share in the comments how this message resonates with you. What aspects of your inner work do you find most challenging? What tools or practices have helped you connect with your deeper roots? Your experience could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this message has touched you deeply, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit. Sometimes, a simple video can be the spark that ignites a profound transformation process. Your act of sharing could have a much greater impact than you imagine. Remember Jung's words, "I am the same as I have always been, but in accepting myself, I have become another." This is the beautiful paradox of deep inner work. By fully embracing who we are, we transform into who we are meant to be. Don't settle for temporarily relieving symptoms when you can permanently heal the roots. Don't content yourself with half a life when you can experience the fullness of your authentic being. As Jung said, the greatest and most important adventure of our life is the exploration of our own inner self. It's a journey that requires courage, patience, and compassion toward yourself. There will be moments of confusion, apparent setbacks, unexpected resistances, but there will also be wonderful discoveries, liberating integrations, and moments of clarity that will transform your understanding of yourself and the world. I encourage you to take that first step today. Perhaps it's as simple as dedicating a few minutes to silent reflection, writing about a pattern you've noticed in your life, or simply pausing and asking yourself, what needs my attention right now? This is your journey, unique and precious like yourself. There's no exact map I can give you, because the path reveals itself as you advance. But I can assure you this, every step you take toward your inner truth is a step toward a fuller, more authentic, and more meaningful life. Thank you for being here, for your openness to these ideas, and for the valuable work you're doing on your own path of transformation. Remember that each time you heal a root of your pain, you're contributing to the collective healing of our world. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring together the depths of the human psyche and the journey toward wholeness that Carl Jung so brilliantly illuminated for all of us. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive notifications of new videos. Your support makes it possible for us to continue creating content that invites deep reflection and authentic transformation. Until next time.